creepier offshoot of Santeria.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
Santeria is already a little bit
but
weird.
there's much more sacrifice, and we're going to talk about some of this in theories, and later on here we'll get into it. But what? Oh, actually, you know what? Let's just talk about it now, because this is what's going on. Is Whetley is telling her that it's most likely that, and he's saying that what's happened is the head has probably been taken to be used in, I'm going to call it a stew-like concoction to make a potion. Head's going to be boiled. It's going to be, then the remnants are going to be used in some kind of black magic ritual. I don't know what that would be. He didn't venture to guess specifically what it was, but it was going to be some type of ritual. Now, this offshoot religion, the priests, Paleros is what they're called, at least the men, they use both animal and human body parts. In this case, it would be the skull, the brain, the nose, the ears, the eye, basically everything that's on the head. I guess I could have just said the head, to go into that potion that they're making, and then they can use it themselves, or they could sell it to somebody to use for whatever end they were going to use that ingredient mix for.
That's still a thing that you see like a lot in Africa these days, where there's this big plight of kids who are born albino in certain African communities, because there are religions that are still practicing in certain parts of Africa where albinos are like, I mean, this is like what they do. They think that like they have this insane magic inside of them, and they're like revered. Are often they're not revered. They are often slaughtered. Human children are slaughtered to like, because they have some kind of magic.
Bit of that mojo, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's like, it's crazy to me that that's still happening, but like, this isn't like a made up thing. This is a thing that actually we have even now documented proof that that's happening still. So,
and to practitioners of that religion, this is serious stuff. This is not like a laughing matter.
No.
It's definitely the real deal for them.
Yeah.
So what Whetley says is, he says, listen, the head's been taken. It's going to be used in this way, but here's the thing. Whoever did it is probably going to return it, and if they return it, they will return it to the site of the murder, and they will do it 42 days after the killing.
Because that was a part of the whole ritual.
Yeah, you had to return it to where the rest of the body.
Otherwise, the whole thing doesn't work.
Right. It's a piece of it.
Yeah.
Wasn't there another one like this? Where somebody said, maybe recently even, where somebody said, no, the head's going to be returned 42 days later, and they were like, yeah, okay, right. It might have been this one that I'm actually thinking of.
I'm pretty sure it's this one, because this is the biggest irony of this story. This is why I like this story so much.
Yeah.
Is that he tells Gallant this, and she says, okay, great. And on the 42nd day, were the cops staking out the park and checking it all out and waiting for the murderer to show back up?
Yeah.
No, none of them went. None of them believed it. And somebody did find the head in the weeds on the 42nd day. So our killer
right nearby where Leroy's body was found.
Walked up, dumped the head in the tall grass, and just walked away scot-free.
That's one of the comical things about this story. I don't want to sound like I'm making light, because somebody did die. But I'm just imagining the scene in the cop shop. They're all standing around, chewing on a donut and having some coffee, and somebody walks in and says, hey, you'll never guess what turned up.
At the scene of the crime,
I bet there were some sour expressions.
I bet you that. I don't think that went over so well.
It reminds me of that scene in the Boondock Saints where, like, the local cops are like, no, these guys are miles away, and the FBI guy is there, and he's like, no, they're going to show up, and, like, as the other guy, the local cop is like, I know all these names, I just don't think anybody else does. He's like, no, they're gonna be miles away. They walk into the police station like while he's like ranting and raving. That reminds me of this so much, where it's just like one person was like, no, it's gonna happen, and everyone else just kind of blew him off, and the case totally would have been solved if somebody would have just taken him seriously.
But no, we would have had the great movie, The Boondock Saints.
Because it was inspired by this. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure it was.
Troy Duffy, man.
Okay.
At least Sandy Gallant got to badger them about it endlessly for years until she was fired.
Well, and you know what? She's made a real name for herself since then, dealing with weird cases that have the occult and magic seem to be linked to them, and she takes these things deadly serious now. If this case had happened, say 10 years later, and she had caught it, she'd have been there on the 42nd day. But in the beginning, she was still just so new with the whole thing. She's like, I don't know, maybe.
Well, I mean, realistically, things like this have to happen for
Yeah.
people to take it seriously, right? So it is a
For a
tragedy,
time,
right? But if anything good came of this, I'm sorry to say something good could have come of this. Hopefully, it means that more cases in the future and more contemporarily have been solved because the investigators are taking it seriously and really saying, like, this is actually a thing that happens, and we're going to actually treat it with respect this time.
Okay, well, let's get into the theories for this story.
Okay.
Okay.
So, really, there's a pretty short list of theories here.
Yeah.
The first one is that, yes, it is a Palo Mayombe thing, and that's what it was. And here's some things to know. There have been multiple cases where the practitioners of this religion are stealing bodies or body parts from graves, and the stuff that I've read has led me to believe or understand that the fresher the body, the stronger the power.
That makes sense.
It does make sense, and it just seems to me it would be easier, frankly, this may sound callous, but to just kill a homeless dude in a sleeping bag than to go dig up a grave.
Oh,
frankly.
yeah,
I mean,
there's less
hell of
likely
a
to
lot.
get caught.
And it's way fresher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of well-known cases, and I'll give you these here. So this was in New York about a decade or so ago. There was a pair of priests. They were a father and son, and they were found to have at least 2 human skulls and some other human bones in pots in the basement of their home, which the police were pretty sure had been pilfered from a local graveyard. There'd been a series of break-ins
Sure.
at that
Yeah.
graveyard.
And by the way, when you say in pots, were they in stew pots with water over burners?
It never actually specified that. I'm going to guess they were probably in dry storage. They would only, I don't think they would keep them soaking until they needed them, because it's a recipe. You do it for a certain amount of time with certain things. So I doubt they just had them sitting around pre-soaked.
Put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I would pre-brew because you just stick a cork in it, and then somebody says, "Hey, I'm gonna buy this thing from you," and you say, "Great, here's $100." They don't have time to question. Am I gonna come back for that brew?
See, I don't think that's right, because if you think about it, there's a certain mystique to saying, "Come back to me in 42 days,
True.
and I will have brewed your thing."
True.
That really.
But they could have been brewing the thing.
But you don't know that everything takes the same ingredients.
You would think that they
Regardless.
would wait for
True.
the order and then
True,
get the
true.
parts.
Okay.
There's another one. This was also, I don't know why these are all in New York, but there was another one where a woman was found with a bunch of bones, and it turned out her followers had been the ones that were going out and stealing the bones from the graveyard, and they busted the guy. I remember they busted the guy with the bones, and he then turned around and squealed on her, and that's how they got her.
Well,
Here's one that's a little more in line with what we're dealing with our case, which is back in the 80s in Mexico City. There was a guy by the name of Adolfo Costanzo, and he started practicing the religion, and by the end of the decade, this guy had kind of gone off the deep end. He got in bed with the cartels, and so these things that he was making, these spells, were for the cartel to help things go better for them. When they eventually got him, and he would be shot to death by one of his own people.
By they, you mean the authorities and not the cartels, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
For the police, yes, you're right. The police cornered him, and so he had one of his own people take him out.
Might have heard of this guy, yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
quite
they
the
found,
tale.
gosh, what it was like 13 bodies buried on his property in various states of decomposition and various parts missing from them.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing came crashing down on him because it wasn't 13, it was 15 bodies, but he had made the mistake, or his people did, of killing a U.S. student who was there on spring break. He was a pre-med student, if I remember right.
Brought a little bit too much attention down there.
And then the U.S. was like, hey, you need to take this guy out. So then they went ahead and went after him, and that's how the whole thing came crashing down for him. So, but I mean, this shows that this does happen. It's not as if we've just kind of made this up on our own.
it also might help explain the mutilated chickens.
Yeah.
Because I have read a few articles that, at least anecdotally, link chicken mutilation or other kind of ritualistic mutilation of animals to this kind of spell casting. So I don't know if I'm not a member of that group, so I don't actually know the rules, right? But I would assume that there'd be some sort of connection there.
Yeah,
if it was a ritual, right?
Poor chickens, I mean, we eat them, we steal their eggs, and then we grab and use them as stuff. It's just like that.
They're kind of jerks, chickens.
Are they really?
They kind of
Oh, okay, I don't care then.
Yeah.
This coming from a guy who has chickens, he would know.
Yeah, he owns chicken slaves.
Yeah. But the other thing, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is not only is this deadly serious to these people and it's real, but it turns out for the priests, it is a huge cash cow.
Oh, yeah.
And so you could see the appeal of, let's just say somebody comes to the priest and says, I need you to do this thing for this crazy, crazy thing. He says, oh, well, that's going to take the most powerful spell ever. And to do that, it's going to, cost you a lot of money. And I'm going to have to go to this huge length. So that's going to mean it's going to be even more money. And, realistically, he doesn't maybe do as much other than he does, as Joe said, sneak into the park and find a sleeping homeless guy and chop his head off with a machete.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure it was a machete.
That is good. Yeah, I would say. But then that would bump the price a little bit if you gotta go murder somebody to get your ingredients. Yeah.
Sorry, this is very callous to me, but I kind of like the idea of you go see your whatever witch doctor, priest, whatever, and you say, listen, I need this whatever miracle level thing done, and he goes, okay, well, do you have the head? And you're like, what do you mean, do I have the head? And he's like, the human head. I need the human head. And you're like, I don't have the human head. What do you mean? And they're like, oh, that price, that $100,000 price that I told you, that was if you brought your own head. You don't have your own head? Well, the cost, it doubled. So, all right.
It's your own head rate.
Yeah.
A la carte rate.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I like the idea. I like the idea of you go to this guy and you tell him your issue and he submits a bid to you. It's got the itemized list. Okay. Murder hapless hobo, get head. You found leave turkey cops behind. Okay,
I'm really sorry.
$10,000.
This is we don't think it's funny that this murder happened. Obviously,
we've turned this into a sitcom scenario.
But also, I'm really sorry to anybody. I guess I'm not. I was gonna apologize to anybody who practices Palo Mayop.
Yeah, don't kill us.
But I don't really.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well,
don't put a hex on us, though.
Let's finish up this theory, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final bit of the theory is, well, why was it Leroy? And really what it comes down to is it most likely he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, according to this theory. From there, we've got two other theories. One is that it's just a random murder, which some random killer went out there and sliced his head off, and thinking it was funny, shoves the corn cobs and the chicken wing in his neck. This thing was covered in the news a little bit at the time, but it did get some coverage. It wasn't national news, but it was in the paper.
Did they actually say in the news that all the Santeria stuff and that the head would be returned in 43 days?
I think that was in the paper. I was trying to find articles from the time, but you know how hard it is sometimes to find it in a real
especially
small
if it's not a crazy story.
But I mean, you could see where this guy says, oh wait, I still have the head because I was going to make it into an ashtray.
Or I still know where the head is.
But the cops wanted, I'll just take it back. And as Joe would say, this throws him off the trail for when I do my next killing.
Well, I will say, I assume the cops searched that specific patch where the head did show up. But
I would presume that.
We're assuming, right? It's possible.
They must have searched it, but people do miss things.
They really, I mean, they really do. So it's also possible the head was there the entire time, and somebody just went looking. Somebody was like, "Oh, we'll go look after 42 days, and we'll see." And they went, and they were like, here's this head.
Although I tend to think probably they didn't go looking after 42 days. Somebody was walking in the park and they saw the head.
Yeah.
Hey, I also tend to doing. God.
I also tend to think that they would be able to tell if it had just been sitting there for 42 days, or if somebody had boiled the heck out of it and used it in a stew.
If it had been sitting there 42 days, it would have been eaten, not chewed on by the animals a lot.
And that's a great point. We never ever see anything that talks about the actual condition of the head upon its retrieval.
Right.
So we have no idea.
Right.
Yeah. But presumably, if it had been left out there the entire time, they would have just been able to tell by just the state of the head, and all the animal bites on it and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing I have, there's really no theories here. The only other thing is that, well, maybe it was Choopy, but he's not known for doing
Choopy.
good, clean slices.
No,
he
he's pretty messy.
He kind of, saws his way through there.
Yeah.
So I think we can clear him in this one.
I think it was probably voodoo.
I think it's probably. Well, what about the theory that his head fell off?
It coulda.
Maybe some good Samaritan saw the head and thought, oh my God, the head needs to be like rehabbed or something. I'll take him to rehab. And then after 43 days, he gave up and brought it back. Said, screw you, head.
Screw you, head.
I don't think that's it.
You don't think
it's like a Walt Disney situation, right, where they preserve the head only. No,
Yeah.
you don't think?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Well, with the
Not
policy,
You don't think they do that for like random homeless people
No.
in Central Park or Golden Gate Park?
Golden
or
Gate Park, I don't think so.
Wherever.
Yeah,
All right, well,
he's gonna
that's
live into the future.
That's
Well,
all
anyway,
I've got on my story.
with apologies to Choopy, I gotta say I'm kind of buying into the whole voodoo story myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of.
I mean, Choopy could have been the purchaser of said potion, but
That's true. But I think Choopy's got enough mojo. He doesn't need to go out and pay for it.
it's probably true.
Yeah, but if there's one thing I've learned from this story though, is that I'm never going to buy used crock pot from anybody. It's brand new in the box.
They're pretty cheap.
Yeah.
My
They're
fiance
pretty
just bought
affordable.
me one of those. So
Oh, did you? Congrats.
thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, so much for that one. I've got my own creepy Halloween story.
Oh,
Yeah, this is a case of Christopher Case. You may not have heard about this one.
the Christopher Case case.
Exactly. Well put. Yeah. This one is about 10 years more newer than the other one. This happened in
I'm sorry.
1991.
More newer.
Yeah.
That's more better.
Yeah.
Defrost.
Exactly. This begins in mid-April 1991. On April 19th, 1991, Seattle police got a call from a woman in Fayetteville, North Carolina, asking them to do a check on a man that she was concerned about. Police went by and checked his apartment, and this was actually like the second or so time that they had stopped by to check on him. And they finally apparently found the door open, and they went inside, and they found him in his apartment in the bathtub with all his clothes on, dead.
Was she a friend?
She was a friend.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody that he had worked with apparently.
And she just hadn't
knew.
seen him in a while.
Yeah, they
Gotcha.
were now like
Okay.
living across country from
Yeah.
each other, but they stayed in contact.
They
with
talked
each
on
other.
the phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Our guy in the bathtub, the dead guy, was named Christopher Case, and the phone call to the police was from a friend of his named Sandy Souter. She said that Christopher had told her that he'd been cursed by a witch and that he had called her repeatedly to report that he was being attacked in the night while he tried to sleep.
Ooh.
I have a
Yeah.
cat. I understand that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think Christopher had a cat. When police looked around the apartment, they did find a lot of crucifixes scattered about, especially he was in the bathtub, as I said. They found like crucifixes around the bathtub also.
Sitting on the lip of the tub.
Yeah, sitting on the rim of the bathtub. And they also noticed that somebody had poured a line of salt around the perimeter of the apartment at the base of the walls with extra little piles of salt in the corners.
And everything I've learned from the TV show Supernatural says that's keeping out ghosts and other bad creepiness like that.
It's
Well, I don't
chalk.
know. I don't know if I would take them all that seriously, but
It's salt.
I mean, maybe in Supernatural, but I'm just saying in real life, it's chalk.
is chalk lines really?
No, it's Supernatural. It's real. It's
No.
the salt.
Oh.
Well, Fox Mulder used salt in the X-Files once too,
Yeah.
to keep away a zombie demon kind of thing. So, I think
Zombie
that's
demons,
that.
yeah, ghosts and bad spirits, it's
Yeah.
chalk. I'm sorry, just trying to, educate our listeners
Yeah,
for
okay.
the ghosts that
Yeah,
are getting
for-
into their house.
For
I'm
when
sorry.
you need it, yeah, a little salt is a good thing.
Salt is fine, yeah.
And it's you can use it for other things like cooking.
Yeah, or, snails.
Yeah, good point. Where else? They found salt also on the doorstep outside, poured in geometric designs, which is odd.
Yeah.
And now the man who claimed to have the curse was dead in his bathtub. There were no signs of violence, no obvious cause of death. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, there was no water in the bathtub. He did not drown. He had his clothes on. as
I just
said.
assumed
Yeah.
he did drown.
No water. It was not a bathtub accident. There was a bathtub death, yeah. But let me give you a little background to the whole thing, how this all began. And also a shout out to Jacob, our listener who suggested this story, although I think I actually found it on Wrist First. One of those ones that has 10 creepy mysteries that'll
there's
make
a
you
bunch
crap
of
your
those.
pants, those kinds of ones. Yeah, exactly. Back to the beginning, Christopher Case was 35 years old when he died. He was raised in Richmond, Virginia.
Known for witches.
Oh, yeah, totally. Worked as a disc jockey on the East Coast before he got his last job, which was at the Muzak Company in Seattle.
The Muzak.
The Muzak Company, yeah, M-U-Z-A-K. They make elevator music. Or are they still around? I don't know if
I
they're still
think they
around.
are.
So he was working in Seattle doing that, and about a week or so before he died, he made a business trip to San Francisco, where he was introduced to a woman who thought that the Muzak Company might be interested in some ancient Egyptian music. Well, actually, and also Christopher himself was kind of interested in various weird old music, so he was kind of into it too.
Okay.
And I've never gotten a name for this mystery woman, nor much of a description, except that she was older. And I'm not sure what that meant, if that meant that she was older than Christopher Case, or just old. But that was how he described it to his friend Sammy Souter. Again, I mentioned her earlier. What Christopher Case told Sammy Souter was that this woman was, quote unquote, intense. Apparently, he was a little weird. He felt like something about her was a little bit off. And they met a second time, which is at a restaurant, and they had dinner. And it was then that she told him that she was a witch. And apparently, she said she wanted to have sex. I don't know how she put it. Exactly.
Yeah, how she made a pass at him.
Yeah, but apparently the whole thing was a bit off-putting for Christopher because he just said no. Or maybe the girl was ugly. Maybe it wasn't the way she put it at all. I don't know.
I loved the reenactment.
Oh yeah, on that
shared
Australian
with
show.
Us. Yeah,
that
she's
was
got crazy yellow eyes. It's the funniest thing in the
She's
world.
got crazy yellow eyes and a sort of crazy expression on But yeah, the reenactment is hilarious because she has this crazy look and those yellow eyes.
Fun.
And you can hear her voice go, "More than that, you must give me your seed. You must make love to me." And he's all, "Oh, no, I don't think so." So she puts a curse on him. Oh, you never know. I mean, they portrayed him as being kind of a nice guy, but he might have been totally rude himself. Maybe
he might have just laughed in her face and then walked out.
Are you kidding? I'd rather do it with dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever, she puts a curse on him. She's not pleased about being rejected. And at first he wasn't stressed about it at all. He didn't believe in the occult. This was not, as according to his friends, he was not some sort of occult type person.
Right.
What's weird about this story? Things did start to happen. He'd wake up in the night. He'd notice strange shadows moving around in his room. And once he woke up and he found that he had little small cuts on his fingers, maybe kind of some kind of defensive wounds. And that's what he told Sammy Souter. And this was, I think, a couple of days before he died.
Yeah.
He told her about that. And I don't know if the cuts were still there when he died, if they found them at the autopsy or not. I don't remember hearing anything about that.
I don't either. I get the feeling that they were on the level of paper cuts.
I was gonna say
small little cuts, little bitty cuts.
It's also I have a tiny little cut on one of my knuckles that I noticed today. I don't know when I got it. I'm pretty sure a witch didn't give it to me in my sleep, but maybe.
Yeah, and it is weird when you wound yourself and you don't even remember doing it.
Yeah.
It's like I do.
Well, those little cuts are super easy though.
It is, yeah.
Especially paper cuts. You don't really notice them until you're like washing your hands or like cutting lemons
Get
or
a little
something.
Salt, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, ow.
Yeah.
Christopher Case was trying to sleep. He couldn't get any sleep because he felt that he was being attacked. And, of course, the lack of sleep, in turn, could not have exactly helped his state of mind.
No.
Right? No.
It's that vicious circle.
It kind of is. He began to research ways to ward off witches. On Tuesday, April 16th, 1991, that's 2 days before he died, he went to a Christian bookstore and bought some crucifixes. And the store's owner was a guy named Rodney Higuchi, and he actually talked to Christopher, and he asked him what he wanted the crosses for. Christopher says, "Well, I'm under attack from supernatural forces, and I want these crosses for protection." And he asked also if they'd been blessed with holy water. I don't know what the reply to that was. Case leaves the house, I think that night of Tuesday, and stays in a hotel.
Oh, he doesn't sleep at home.
Yeah, he doesn't want to sleep at home, and it didn't help apparently because, well, dude, you can't hide from a curse,
True.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hotel.
The haunting isn't your house, it's you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Curses and feds.
Yeah. The next day, Wednesday, April 17th, he goes back to the bookstore. He buys some more crucifixes. And Rodney Higuchi said he saw him again. And he seemed more agitated, more exhausted, more just strung out. And at that point, at the first time he saw him, he wasn't too concerned. He figured, the guy's a little crazy. Second time, he's like, there's something seriously wrong with this dude, or something really actually is going on here. Also that day, Wednesday morning, Christopher Case talked to Sammy one more time, told her he thought he might die from the curse, and she was concerned about him and kept trying to call him back over the course of the day. He never answered. Wednesday afternoon, Christopher Case went to see a priest. The priest, he was interviewed for that Australian TV show, by the way, that we mentioned earlier.
Right.
It's called the Extraordinary.
something
Yeah,
Australian.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Being Australians, they mispronounce the word. They call it like the extraordinary or something like that. But anyway, the extraordinary. The priest said the cases, I'll quote him here, could feel this malignant power influencing his body, and he was scared to death that it was going to kill him, unquote. So we got a number of people, Sammy Suter, one other person supposedly also in Fayetteville who was unnamed.
Yeah, there was 2 people that he was talking to.
Yeah,
2 women.
Yeah, 2 women in Fayetteville, the priest, the bookstore owner. So he was obviously really concerned about this whole curse thing. When Sammy got home Wednesday night back in Fayetteville, there was a message from Christopher on her answering machine. Apparently his last words, at least definitely to her, but maybe to anybody. And calmly, they played it on that reenactment show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that was actually his voice on the tape or not.
I don't know.
I have no idea. But he said they're trying to kill me, unquote. He also said, I'm not looking forward to tonight. It's serious. Yeah. About 8 p.m. that night, Sammy called Seattle PD. He asked them to check on him. They went by his apartment. They found the place to be secure, unquote. In other words, the door was locked.
Yeah.
And there was no answer when they rang the doorbell. The police did notice apparently at that time that somebody had poured a line of salt around the outside of the apartment, like leading from the front door to the back door.
That's always good for your flower beds.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure the gardener was really appreciative of that.
They didn't notice the geometric.
Or they didn't mention it.
Yeah.
I would mention that over a line of salt. If you're mentioning salt at all, wouldn't you say, like, also there was this weird shape?
You would think so, but I mean, who
they
knows?
might not have found a head. Who knows?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, they could have just not really realized anything was going on. They just walk up, ring the doorbell, not realizing they're stomping all over the whole salt thing.
They're the reason that he died.
That could have been it, exactly.
Yeah,
they gave
broke
the demon
the seal.
entree. And then the next day, Thursday, April 18th, Sammy Souter tried to call Christopher Case again, calls him multiple times, gets no answer. Spoiler alert, because he was dead. She called Seattle PD again and asked them to check on him. They went by his apartment at 3:30 p.m. According to most reports that I've read, the front door was unlocked at this time, and they went inside. They found the apartment was a mess. There were weird little notes all over the place, crucifixes, salts. They went into the bathroom, and they found Christopher Case dead in his bathtub, on his knees, had his head resting on the edge of the bathtub next to the faucet. Yeah, with his clothes on, again. Burned down candles all around and crucifixes, and he was dead. And
wow.
The official coroner's verdict, naturally this got a little notice. I sent you guys a couple of articles in a local Seattle paper about it.
Yeah.
It was a little strange. But the official coroner's verdict was acute myocarditis.
Which is heart failure, right?
Yeah.
Unspecified.
Well, myocarditis is like inflammation of the heart muscle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Christopher was in good health. He had no family history of heart disease. Friends said he didn't do drugs, didn't drink much, if at all. They said he was mentally stable. Well, some people said he was less stable in his final days, but I guess that's what a curse will do to you.
Yeah.
You know, but he still died of heart failure. But myocarditis is, as I said, an inflammation of the heart muscle. It is often fatal. In fact, 200,000-300,000 people a year in the U.S. die from it. So it's not uncommon at all. There are a lot of causes. There's infection, including viral and bacterial both. Toxins, certain drugs, including some antipsychotics, some designer drugs can cause it. It can also be caused by an autoimmune disorder. So a lot of things can cause this thing. Also radiation.
Oh, so you're saying that this witch was dropping plutonium in his pocket?
Probably, yeah, that could have been it. I'll curse you. I curse you. Look over there. Yeah. So
you don't notice anything in your pocket.
Yeah. And Wikipedia does not list witchcraft or sorcery as causes of myocarditis. But, what do they know? They're wrong a lot. Yeah, right? Yeah. So what caused his heart to fail? We've got several theories here. One is that he was just frightened to death.
Which is a real thing.
It can happen.
It literally can happen.
Your heart, put that kind of stress in your heart, especially if perhaps he had some pre-existing condition that none of us knew about.
Yeah. Well, there's that. It's that flight or fight pattern. The adrenaline that just like surges through your body can, especially if it's sustained over a number of days, which it sounds like he might have been.
Yeah.
It'll just literally overload all of your organs, and if your heart is a little weaker, it'll just give out.
Yeah, and there are people like I know a guy who just last year was like, much younger than me, who just one day his heart just kind of blew up, and nobody had a clue. He was a totally healthy, very active, athletic guy, and bam.
Yeah.
And so it happens, and so it might have been the case with old Christopher, and just kind of a coincidence. Well, and not entirely even a coincidence. The witch puts this thing on him. It's sort of, and then one odd thing happens, and then he just sort of...
He just attributes it to the curse.
Yeah, could that have been the curse? And he starts really sort of thinking about it, and then something a little odd happens. Oh my God, it's real, it's the curse, and it just stresses, and then,
Just hate cycle.
Yeah, it could have been, so that's one theory. He was frightened to death, maybe exacerbated by a pre-existing condition.
Yep.
What's our next theory? It was witchcraft. And I was going to call some witches and ask, but then I thought, well, what if the witch says, "Well, Joe, you must have sex with me," and then I get a curse on me, and I didn't need that really.
Yeah.
We don't really need a curse.
And you guys wouldn't make the call either, so what am I going to do?
No.
So
you're the one who likes to call people.
Yeah.
I do like to call people, but I was a little scared this time around. So I don't know. I mean, maybe one of our listeners can answer this question. I don't know if an actual real life witch is capable of putting this kind of deadly curse on a person or not.
I don't know.
I don't either.
We will find out.
I'm sure we will.
I'm sure somebody will let us know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's another possibility, which was that it was just sheer coincidence. Maybe, as I said already, it might have been a pre-existing condition. But it's also possible that he just caught, like, say, a viral infection, which, inflamed his heart muscle. And it just happened to happen around the same time as this curse happened. And then, of course, he's once again feeling some of the effects of this in his chest, all this stuff that's going on, and starts thinking, oh my God, it's a curse. And then he dies from it, but it never had anything to do with the curse at all. Not even dying of fright, he just died of the heart condition, and it's just a sheer coincidence.
Totally possible.
There's one theory that you have overlooked.
Which one's that?
He could have died from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Uh-huh.
If he's laying and sleeping in the tub and it is surrounded by candles, and especially if they're cheap ones, so they're not good, clean burning, because, when they burn crappily, they produce a little more than a nice clean burn would. And at least I got the impression that he was using, rather large candles, which means they would burn for a long time. That heavy gas would pour into the tub, and eventually it would, force the air out, because carbon monoxide is heavier than air, and if he's got his face in the tub, carbon monoxide poisoning does have an effect on your heart. It's one of the things that it does that kills you.
Interesting.
It's possible, yeah. Though his face was barely in the tub, though. It was right. His head was on the edge of the tub.
The tub could have been full of invisible gas. And initially when I thought about this, I was like, oh, well, I heard something about the tap was going a little bit. And so I was like, oh, well, then there was water flowing, so it would have gone down the drain. And then I realized, oh, no, it's going to have a P-trap on the drain, which means, because P-traps stop sewer gas from coming up, which means gas in the bathroom doesn't go down either. So that tub could have filled up with carbon monoxide. Or he could have had a leak in the house, and that's why he was freaking out, because carbon monoxide will do crazy things to you.
I don't know where a carbon monoxide leak, like what would the source of it be?
Well, it would have to have been more of like some kind of gas leak.
Gas leak or
it would
something
be some
like
kind
that.
of gas leak rather than carbon monoxide leak. But it's one of those things like,
maybe he was just eating too much salt.
Maybe.
Yeah, he was a salt freak. I don't think he had a gas leak, though, because, it's possible that he didn't have a sense of smell and he couldn't detect the gas leak. The police probably would have noticed.
You would think that there would have been some notice if it was a gas leak.
But it was a gas leak.
But I still wonder about the carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah, I don't know if they checked. You'd think they would have checked for something like that, though.
I don't know.
You would think they would.
You would think they would have checked for a head, but we don't know.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with pre-existing condition just exacerbated. So he was frightened to death, but it was a pre-existing condition.
Okay.
I'm going with carbon monoxide.
Okay.
I'm going with witch.
All right. Which one?
I don't know. Who's on first?
Exactly.
What's on second? Well, my story is also pretty macabre.
It's, I think, more macabre than any of them.
More macabre?
More macabre.
It's macabre than mine.
This is macabre.
Yeah.
And actually, this one was suggested by some people. It was suggested by Candace and Matt. So thank you for that. But we're going to talk about the Corpse Bride of Mexico, because I like brides, because I am a bride.
Not
Not
quite.
this kind of bride, hopefully.
And by the way, but,
Yeah, you might have set yourself up.
yeah. And by the way, just to clarify here, this is not Mexico's corpse bride. It's a corpse bride that's in Mexico. Mexico did not marry a corpse.
They did not.
Okay,
It's
no,
true.
Mexico
Yeah.
did not.
Yeah. It's also known as La Pascualita. It's
Good job.
Thank you.
I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah, see, I can pronounce things. I know what things are. This is a creepy mannequin in the window of the bridal store in Mexico. You know the one.
Oh yeah.
This is a famous story.
You know
Yeah,
the
oh, yeah.
one. The legend of this is really simple. The bulk of this story comes from the theories, unfortunately, but that's okay. We'll get through it. In 1930, the mannequin was installed in the same window where she still resides to this day.
What town is this in, by the way?
Chihuahua.
It's in the region of Chihuahua.
Oh.
I don't know if it's in the city of Chihuahua. It might be in the city of Chihuahua. But this mannequin wears a beautiful long white wedding dress. I think it's actually the same one that she's worn this entire time. I don't think they've ever changed it.
No, they've changed the dress.
No,
Have they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I remember in the reading people who were complaining whenever they had to go do stuff with the mannequin, they hated it. So I'm pretty sure they changed her dress.
Oh, they hated it just because they were creeped out by it?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like a store shop
Yeah, an
owner
employee.
helper?
Yeah, like an employee in the store.
Huh, I did not read that.
I swear I read that, but
I think you're making that up.
I could
Yeah.
be be wrong.
Anyway, it's always a long, flowy dress. The store was owned by Pascuala Esparza, who had a daughter who was to be married just a few days prior to the installation of this mannequin in the window. And the daughter, it's said, passed away from being bitten by a black widow spider, like on the day,
of the wedding?
or like
That's
the day
kinda sad and
before the
tragic.
day of the wedding. It's super sad and tragic.
Yeah.
So people speculated because the mannequin actually looked a lot like this daughter. They thought actually somehow, I don't know how they think, but somehow that Miss Esparza just somehow preserved the body of her daughter in mannequin form
Uh-huh.
and just
No.
like put her in her wedding dress in the window, and that she's there, preserved there.
Sounds like
To this day.
sounds like a great like Alfred Hitchcock sort of thing.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
kinda. Yeah.
It's a lot like that. What's that story of the mummy that's in the carnival ride that turns out as a real body? Do you remember that one?
You talking about the real story or the movie story?
No, the real story, not the movie
Oh,
story.
Yeah, no, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy
Well,
though.
there's a ton of stories about like the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, like has X number of real skulls in it. Not true, obviously, but whatever. So yeah, most of the discussion, as I said, revolves around theories on this one. So we're gonna hop right into theories, and the two theories are either it is a mannequin or it is a corpse, right?
yeah. Well, it's basically that's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the theory that it is a corpse
A
Okay.
corpse.
first.
It's a corpse. Okay.
It's a corpse.
So it is a corpse bride.
It's the real corpse bride of the daughter of the owner of the shop who died from a black widow bite the day of her wedding.
You will also see there's multiple means of death you'll see listed for this girl.
Yeah, sometimes.
She never got like crushed by like a gravel crusher. Or
No.
anything like
No,
that.
no,
yeah,
but
never
it's-
anything like
it's-
that. Never
there's
got
a
run
couple
over
of
by a
different ways that she
locomotive.
died.
So what are some of the other ones you saw?
I think
I saw this one the most. That's why I keep
Yeah,
going
well, this
with
was
it.
the most prevalent, but
Yeah.
I seem to remember something about like she was upset that she couldn't marry somebody, and so she threw herself off a cliff. I've seen that somewhere.
Okay.
And there's a couple of
That
different.
doesn't
ones.
lend itself to
I know.
mannequinization.
That's
as
why they're
really,
not
no.
as popular.
Fair enough, yeah. So the mannequin, if you listen to these while you drive, I don't know what to tell you, man, I'm sorry, but if you're at your desk or you're near a computer, you should Google it if you don't already know the mannequin that we're talking about. Her hands are really super creepy. Like, they're the creepiest part.
They're very realistic.
They are.
Super, like, hyper realistic. The rest of her, the face is not necessarily lifelike, but more lifelike than a normal mannequin.
Oh yeah, way
The
far.
hair is a wig, but you would expect that from even a real preserved corpse.
Mm-hmm.
If you were trying to do that, if you were trying to preserve it, you would make a wig out of the hair. So that'd be a pretty quick turnaround process. Take like 40 hours to make good ones.
Oh, did they? But also, the other thing about the contrast between the face and the hands is that your bride typically, I don't know what's going on in Mexico or not, but might be wearing a lot of makeup on her face, but not on her hands.
That's true.
Might explain why she's kind of monochromatic in the face, but her hands have the typical color variation that you see.
Well, the hands, I mean, the thing, let me finish describing this and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. Her eyes are clearly fake, like obvious, like any kind of taxidermied anything.
And
her eyelashes,
whenever you move around, the eyes swivel.
That is what they say. The eyelashes are fake, but look like real hair. I mean, just like fake eyelashes.
They're well done.
And then
and by the way, fake eyelashes are essentially, for all intents and purposes, real.
And then the eyebrows are real hair, like stuck into the mannequin. They're not just like drawn on like we've seen in some preservation efforts. And so what I want to say about the face is that there's no wrinkles or any kind of fine lines or anything.
There's a lot of tension in the skin. It's very firm.
It's very firm.
It's not slack.
Yes. And that doesn't really occur in real people. Even with makeup, it settles into, especially in the 30s, your makeup's going to settle into your grooves a little bit. So it is less lifelike than the hands. But again, if you were to preserve a body, you would pull that skin probably about as tight as you could.
Very true.
It is said that she has varicose veins on her legs, but I can't find any pictures of that.
Well, when has she ever been seen with not wearing a full-length wedding dress?
Well, according to Steve,
shop employees.
When shop employees have to change the corpse.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from, is people who say they've worked in the shop, and that's
where the varicose veins thing comes from. Yeah.
Seems like you would have taken some pictures by now, but whatever. And also, there is actually a case, well, two cases actually, of corpses being preserved on this level. The first one we're going to talk about is Lennon. John Lennon.
That's right. You can see his corpse in Hollywood.
Sorry. I mean Vladimir Lenin, the former leader of the Soviet Union, who died a mere 6 years before La Pascualita, reportedly did, on January 21st, 1924. His corpse...
He's actually not dead. He's they've been keeping him alive somewhere in a laboratory.
It's possible. It's totally possible.
His corpse is still around. It's still looking pretty.
It's on display in Lenin's mausoleum in the Red Square in Moscow since, again, just a few days after he died. I think more than a few days, but they say just before, it was a couple days. Yes, his preserved corpse has been there for literally a million years. The thing about Lenin's corpse, because people talk about Lenin's corpse like a lot for this, right? The thing about Lenin's corpse is that, there are some issues with preserving a corpse on this level.
It's actually been a major undertaking.
It has been.
They've spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah. One of the big problems that the embalmers faced was, Lenin was older when he died. And so there were dark spots and things like that. And that continues to kind of get worse as he's preserved. Lots of it's mold, but we don't really
I was going to say the mold is a big problem.
Mold is a really big problem with Lenin. But they seem to be able to kind of correct that with a variety of different baths and
chemical
ointments.
baths?
Yeah, basically. So they kind of they kind of basically bleached his body or his skin a little bit.
Didn't they replace a body part or two?
A couple
so
of
bad?
They have definitely replaced a number of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things like George Washington's axe, That's kind of like that one.
Yeah, I mean they've replaced. There have been damp spots on the skin. I think they replaced an entire arm at one point, because I think honestly the only thing they haven't totally replaced is his face at this point. Well, and I was doing some Googling and I can't tell, but I think they actually this past year may have replaced him with a mannequin.
Yeah.
This past year, because in 2016, not 19 something, in 2016 it cost Russia 13 million rubles of federal rubles, not dollars, to maintain his body. There's a team of experts.
He's human jerky.
He is human jerky.
I would not be surprised if there's nothing really left but his hands and his face, and the rest of it's all just a framework or a mannequin down there.
I've seen a photo or two of his body, and his torso is just creepy looking, because of course he's got no organs, so it's just his rib cage, and it's just
skin and bones, literally.
It's really gross looking.
Yeah. Also, you may have missed it because the boys were interrupting me, but I did say 13 million rubles to preserve Lenin in this creepy jerky state. That's like over $2 million American.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to preserve the body of like one person, and it's not really done particularly well. It looks kind of like
because
crap.
it's not necessarily easy to preserve a human body for that length of time.
Listen,
No, it really isn't. Yeah. But I would say, by the way, guys, if I die, I don't want my body to be on public display. Just cremate me. I don't care what the fans say.
Oh, well, I already bought the glass coffin, dude. We've already signed the paperwork. You remember that contract you thought you were signing for advertisements? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I had the coffee tin already for the ashes. Sorry. So, like I said, Lenin's body, he has a team of scientists literally dedicated to preserving his body. We also have an actual true story that is really creepy that we're going to talk about right now.
Of what, a more amateur
Of a more amateur attempt that might be more representative of what it would look like if just a random wedding dress shop owner were trying to preserve the body of her deceased daughter. Ready?
Let's hear it.
Let's have this.
Just as a warning, this did not go well.
No.
No. It's
This is an icky story.
This is
it
the
makes my
story.
skin crawl.
This is the story of Karl Tanzler and the love of his life. Long story short, after spending most of his life with a fake love of his life, he really finally met his one true love when he was treating her for tuberculosis.
It's kind of sad that he met her when she was kind of on her way out the door.
Well, it's weird because he says that when he was a child, one of his ancestors came to him and